All right, we are live. Welcome everyone who is watching. This is another Mind Body Medicine conversation with myself, Benny, and I have a special guest today. Actually, the first female guest. I don't know how the the ladies haven't been getting represented, but I have Kate Galliett. Did I get it
Well,
right? I got it right. I got it right. So, if you've been watching what I've been covering so far, really, this is always a conversation, and I get people that I really just respect in the field of generally health and wellness and all of that sort of thing, and we just have a conversation about what they've got going on, and generally we have a two fro, and on the other side you get some really cool stuff that will help you in your practice, with your body, with your mind, and all of the things that kind of make you a human. So it's an honor to have you today, Kate. And
it's such a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
yeah, so we've just been connecting, I suppose, through the wonders of social media, and this is our first time we've had a conversation, via this medium. And I've been really inspired by all of the things that you've been doing, and it's quite multifaceted. It's not just the typical kind of sets and reps. Body beautiful type approach, and it really resonates with me in particular as well, because you touch on, I suppose, the human side of health and fitness, and the fact that beneath the exterior there's this person underneath that has emotions and is unique in the way that they think about the world.
Yeah,
And
it's like resonating with my heart already. Oh my
yeah.
gosh, it's true. Like, thank you for that. And I don't intentionally set out with the intention to check those boxes, but I'm so glad that comes through because my what resonated most with me since I became a trainer so long ago was being kind of this realm of fitness when, like my site says, real life. Like you're the real human doing real stuff and you have real stuff going on, and that it's there's a person underneath the like stuff we want our body to be able to do. And I'm such a fan of figuring out how to have that relationship with your body instead of dragging it along like behind your cart, hoping it's going to keep up with you with what you want to be able to do. So I'm so glad that comes through. That makes me happy. Thank you.
Oh, it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure, and it's very easy for me to see, and thank you as well. And so I suppose, like if we look at it, I notice, particularly in my work as well, that the stuff that we're doing is becoming more and more apparent that it's needed. Outside of the, I suppose, traditional facade type fitness of like everything's perfect all the time, and it's really this kind of linear thing. Like what inspired you to, I suppose, somewhat go against the grain into this domain? Was there something that sparked within you, within your own journey?
No, I think I was incredibly lucky,
Mm.
honestly, because like the organization of things during college that brought me to my first personal training certification and the course of study that I took when I was doing my exercise science degree was like the realm was ripe for that space to start growing. So, be that as it may, I don't know what the National Academy of Sports Medicine is doing today, but that's who I had my first certification with, because something about like what they were talking about at the time kind of resonated a bit with me. And that sent me off on this journey of figuring out why somebody's arch of their foot isn't there or looking like it's there, and why somebody's hip isn't moving the way it seems like it should be able to move. And that was presented to me at maybe a fairly formative time when I was 19 and 20, studying all of this stuff. And it just sent me down the rabbit hole. Had it been a year or two later and some other thing had been kind of starting to gain ground in the fitness world, it might have been a totally different story. So I feel really lucky that at that time that just set me off on this course. And I was working with kind of a chiropractic neurologist when I was in my early 20s, because I was actually quite sick when I was younger and really didn't feel well and didn't really feel like I embodied true health, more like I feel like I do today. And so he was helping me with a lot of things from when I was younger and was much sicker. And he would teach me little things about the body or about something that my body could be able to do. And he was the first one who said, this isn't the way you are. You're not stuck with this. When I was younger, doctors would say, it's just the way you are. Like, pain and infections and gut issues and all manner of dysfunction in my body, being exhausted when I was 19. He was the first one to say, actually, that's not the way you're not stuck with that. And there's all these other things that are available to you as a human to evolve and adapt and shift into. And I think that, like, saying that was a thing that I could believe opened the door for me to be like, so my right foot doesn't have a really strong arch right now. How could I build one? I have that at my fingertips. I could figure that out. How could I make my shoulder do what I want it to do for a handstand? I bet I could figure that out. And that seems like it helped kind of send me down that path, because even today, there's very little that shows up on my doorstep for work or for my own well-being that I go, oh man, you're just stuck with that. I can't think of the last time that I even said that, like, or thought that. So yeah, so I think that's how I kind of started off on this whole pathway. And geez, you spend long enough in this industry and do enough self-study, you go down some rabbit holes and start getting a really interesting amalgamation of knowledge that you then get to share with your clients and your friends, that is totally unique to you. So that's kind of where mine comes in, you know?
Yeah, awesome. Very cool. And I really, there's about 1,000 topics that I could branch off with all of that. And but one thing, kind of just, I have a saying that like the small things are really massive things. And what I mean by that, and I really love what you said about, just talking about the foot or just talking about the shoulder, and how that then relates to something bigger like the handstand or, the way you walk or anything like that. It can sometimes be hard for people to go to that level. From my experience, they often go, I just want to do the handstand, or I just want to, perform at this rate for whatever sport or whatever it is. How do you go about helping other people kind of come to that place where it's like, you know what, it's really important actually that I address this, my feet, Yeah.
That's still to this day a tricky one for me to answer, because growing up, you can ask my mom this, I always like to do things right, like do it as best as I could and follow the steps. I wanted to follow the steps to get to the end point. And so I never, and this is a true I never statement, I never chose to look at athletics or movement or fitness or whatever as let me skip 7 steps to get to the end point. I either could do it already because that was within my wheelhouse of naturally gifted movement, whatever that might have been, or I instantaneously broke it down and was like, okay, I got to do this, I got to do this, I got to do this, and then progress that on. And that was hard initially when I started working as a coach, because you're right, people would be like, but I want to do a handstand. I don't care about making my wrists capable of extension and flexion and control. I don't care. And at first I would be like, but you should care. But should is a really dangerous word that means nothing for anybody in terms of actual action, right?
Yeah.
And so I found that careful explanation will bridge the gap as close as it's going to bridge. And then either they're going to be able to walk across the bridge and meet you on the side of, oh, I get it, I got to do some work, some prerequisite work before I can do the handstand, or they won't. And I had those clients over the years who were like, I don't want to do the work on my feet. And I was like, but you have bunions and flat feet and okay. And they're like, but I don't want to. And so I built the bridge and with the education, but at the end of the day, they got to want to do it. And sometimes the person is just not at the place where they want to do it enough to do it. And then sadly, I get those folks once they're injured and then they're ready. But this is a human thing, isn't it? Like, the pain has to be uncomfortable enough to take action, or the curiosity / what can I get out of this has to be great enough that they're going to take action. But if they're not significant in either end of those spectrums, there's no reason for the human to take action. So my hope is always to meet them if they're at one of those. And if they're not, to just be like, it's okay. And that's okay for them. And they'll get to one or the other eventually.
Yes.
And then we'll talk.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can completely resonate. Yeah. I remember when I started, this game a long time ago, maybe 13 years ago or something like that. And I had a lot of people where I'm like, you got to just do this, I suppose had the benefit of being on the other side and I've been through my own injuries as well, and just realizing you really need to focus on this. And then they're like, no, it's not important to me. And it was in Australia, there's a saying, it's like, don't flog a dead horse. And
I really love Australian sayings. Also, I was told about drop bears. I was told about drop bears by an Australian. Is that a thing you tell people?
Yeah, sometimes. I'm going to be elusive and just keep the mystery. Yeah.
They're so elusive.
Yeah.
When I come, I hope I see one.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the thing is you just you don't see them.
No.
All of a sudden, and then it's like, what happened? Drop bear.
People are like, what is a drop bear? Just, yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, guys, tangent.
Anyway, yeah.
So, anyway, feeding a dead horse, flogging a dead horse.
Flogging a dead horse, yeah. So, but it's one thing that I've really realized as well is, I suppose, about acceptance of where people are at. And that's been a really big thing as a coach for me, in accepting people where they're at and just going, you know what, we can work together. Maybe we're not ready to work together. And it seems like you're developing a big community around people who are open and ready to do that work. And a lot of what I've seen you've been talking about is, I suppose, the notion of having a body that is unbreakable. And I'd love to know, I suppose, what would that involve for someone? And yeah.
That's such a big question.
I know it's a big question. Yeah.
It really is. But for me, living with an unbreakable body is, it's not that you're never going to get injured again.
Yes.
Because that's impossible. Random things happen. Terrible things happen. You can't control the universe. But the word control is a part of it. The word control is a part of it. When you're unbreakable, you can control what you can control, and you manage everything else. Meaning, like, if you trip over a kid's toy that never is on the floor and now is on the floor, and you could not have seen that coming, that you land better when you fall. That when you know you're going to be on a crazy long car trip, and you know your low back has not liked long car trips in the past, that you have the strategies and the coping mechanisms to preemptively address that, manage it during it, and avoid any of the possible negative outcomes that would happen in the past. Maybe in the past your back would go out and you'd be incapacitated for a week. Now you just notice some tension and you know exactly what drills to do to support that. And that you have the ability to be durable and strong enough to do the things that you want to do, plus a little bit more, I always say. And that you have the mobility to feel great for the vast majority, like right up to the end kind of stuff with your life. And that even when you don't feel great, whether it's because of an injury or a sickness or inflammation from stress and lifestyle that you're experiencing right now, that you can take ownership and you know how to like drive the boat or figure out who to talk to help you drive the boat, to always be working towards feeling better. I know that's a big, giant, nebulous, like, pie in the sky thing to say, but it is this bigger thing. And within that are the contextual, like durability, mobility, control, injury resistance, not necessarily prevention, because that's impossible. And people doing awesome things. In my members forum for the Unbreakable Body, the program named after what we're talking about here, every week everybody checks in with things they did with their Unbreakable Body. And it's amazing to see more people going outside, doing more things, picking up powerlifting, doing stuff that is just, you'd never even have thought that was in their realm of like stuff they think about with being fit for their body, right? And it's kind of a secret like goal of mine to get more people doing awesome stuff outside, because I want more hiking partners and climbing partners and adventure partners. But also I think the world's a better place when more people feel good and move well and feel in control of what they can control in their lives, which is only themselves.
Yes. It really kind of reminds me of one of my favorite sayings, which is know thyself. And the more we get to know ourselves, I suppose, the more we can navigate the maze of life in a peaceful way. And I really liked one thing that you said about having this self-knowledge. It can sometimes I work with a lot of people who have had injuries, and I'm sure you do as well. And that moment when, let's say, you've been feeling all good, and then you get that injury that just shakes you, and you don't have the resources, you don't know what to do. It's like my lower back's gone out, and I can't address it in the same way that I did before. And that self-knowledge, that skill that you can do something, that you can improve it, and no matter how big it gets, it creates, for me, I've found a lot of peace within ourselves. And from that space, it kind of sets up a container for lots of really good stuff, taking away the fear and all of that sort of thing. But there's a question brewing about all of this, I'm sure. There was a thing that you were talking about with autonomy and seasonality as we were kind of getting prepared for this conversation. I think it's just a sub-tangent. We may come back to all of those sorts of things. But tell me a little bit more about your perspective on seasonality with respect to fitness, because I think it's something that's interesting, because a lot of the time, I suppose in my observations, fitness can be like a really linear thing. It's like I need six-pack abs 12 months of the year. I need to be performing at my peak at a moment's notice. And
Yeah.
I never really understood that when looking into nature, when getting outdoors. Nature doesn't seem to respond like that. And I'd be interested to hear your thoughts around all of that.
Absolutely. And yeah, it's going back to what you're saying about the injuries real quick, like this, because this goes along with it. I think it's still like we're not giving the permission, but when someone hears the message for the first time, or maybe the 50th time, and it finally sinks in, that you're allowed to heal and you're allowed to not die injured and broken and pain-filled and everything that the media and kind of the world has told you is normal for getting older, that you're allowed to actually buck that whole tradition of pain and recurring injury and the whole thing, and go seeking somebody to assist you or knowledge to assist you in the journey. The seasonality is kind of in that same vein. When you recognize that you actually absolutely have the permission to go explore anything your heart desires, and that it's okay that you let go of one thing that you were pursuing for a while to then pursue something else. I said this on a Facebook Live talk a little while ago, and I find myself saying this a lot, which means I need to hear it because that's how these things go, right?
Yeah.
That if you're afraid of losing something, like you got injured, so you might gain some body fat because you're not going to be doing much for, if it's a serious injury kind of thing, for weeks or months, or you're going to start hypertrophy training because you for the first time in your life want to have a physique kind of goal, that you might lose some mobility because that's just kind of the deal with hypertrophy training and how long it takes and only so many hours in the day. If you're worried about losing something, you never really had it in the first place, because you always have all of it. And that means you also can let it go over there for a while and then be excited when it comes back again. And that's the deal with fitness. Once you recognize that, you go, I'm going to start working on hand balancing because that's something that has fascinated me for a long time. And to do it well, that means I now do not have time to do my powerlifting class anymore. And I'll be sad to see that go. But at the same time, that's the way the seasons work. I'm sad to see every season go. Where I live, we have every season is epic. It's amazing. And every one of them, when they leave, you're like, oh. But instead of being all wishy-washy about it, it tends to be more of a bye-bye, we'll see you next time. And the next one's on its way in. And I think more folks are starting to get that message and are almost kind of doing a collective cool. I can switch gears and do this other thing, and it's okay that I kind of leave this practice for a while, and that when I test my handstand in 2 months, it won't be the same as when I finished my handstand training program and I had this amazing 60-second handstand or whatever.
Yes. Yeah. It reminds me of, I suppose, inviting exploration and also keeping things fresh, not being too dogmatic in the way that you're approaching your body and life and fitness and all of that sort of stuff. And a big thing that I work with is, I suppose, addressing stagnation, whether that's in the mind, the emotional systems, or just in the way we move in general. And that can be a really big culprit to really take away, I suppose, from someone's vitality and all of that sort of thing. And I love what you're saying about all of that, because it just keeps things fresh. It gives people the space to just go and try that thing and explore that thing and be okay with not having to be perfect at everything. And
Yeah.
yeah, is
And I think a follow up to that is like, so this one kind of blew my mind a little bit when I first heard this kind of lesson. So I hope I share it well, because it's still new for me. It's within the last year, something I've learned. When you kind of stagnate, when you do the like linear progressive, same thing, kind of you figure it out. There's beauty in that, right? Because you're like, yeah, I'm owning this. Like, I know what I do on Mondays. I know the progression that should happen. There is some beauty in that. And also, there is a knowing that keeps you from ever experiencing something new. So the original lesson came from, hey, so it was actually given to me. They were like, hey, Kate, every time you try to control for the outcome, that means you don't get to experience a new outcome, which means you never learn how to handle new outcomes. So you're really good at handling outcome A and B if those happen. So if you try to control for A and B, that means when outcome C happens, you actually have never practiced that and you have no way to handle it. So the only way to handle more and more things and get good at like rolling with all of them is to let yourself experience them, which means you have to be willing to experience something new, which might feel weird and different and not normal. But that's how you expand your horizon. So,
yes. Another thing that you talk about often is the mind and mindfulness. And I suppose mindfulness and all of that sort is really often around, at least from my experiences, creating that space of observation so that new experiences can unfold that we didn't always plan for. That, and as we practice it, we learn to get better in those moments where the shit hits the fan or where we just didn't anticipate and we had to improvise. Kind of like I was walking up a creek just yesterday with a friend of mine, and I do a lot of work for my feet, and it was nice just going up this creek bed, and I think about 3 times the rocks fell out from under me, and like it was fine. Like I would just kind of like to say I took it like a mountain goat and just kept moving. There was
awesome.
yeah. Anyway, I'm putting a feather in my own cap there, but interestingly, as we were coming back with a friend of mine, this little kid was coming down this bit and just fell once, and it was like a big fall, and we kind of gathered around to help him up and all of that sort of thing. And it really kind of shook him, that moment of, I didn't expect that. And the rest of the way he was kind of, it looked like his body was actually okay, but his mind was, it was really affected. Like it seemed like a traumatic event for him. And anyway, I think a lot of the time we can overlook the mental aspects of a fitness regime and all of that sort of thing. Are there some strategies that you found really helpful to support people with that? Like rather than just focusing on the sets and the reps and like how my body looks, but also like what's going on in the mind through that process. I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on all of that.
Yeah, it's a big reason why when I did roll out the Unbreakable Body 3.0 back in January, there were all these add-ons I wanted to do, and one of them that I was like, I got to figure out how to put this in because it's so helpful when people do it, is a whole mindfulness training program where they can go through exercises and drills to do various mental training techniques and visualizations and meditations, because you're absolutely right. Like so much of your we know this and that kid is a perfect example, movement variability. So how free you are to move through space and handle it without risk of or increased risk of injury, to pain science research showing us how pain and how we respond to pain based on what we believe about it and what we believe about the world around us and our safety, to also like what you're saying, like feeling pride for what you do, and what your body, how amazing it is, not just how it looks or if it can do the best planche on Instagram or whatever your metric is. So when I'm coaching clients and in private settings, and when we're doing things in the Unbreakable Body, it starts with exactly what you said, with just starting to become aware. So just starting to pose questions that get the person to stop for a moment and just ponder that without judgment and without having to even have an answer. So a simple one I do that I'm happy to share is I'm taking an explorer's mindset. So stopping what you're doing right now and turning into the explorer, both of your inner and your outer world. So evaluating from the sense of like curiosity and data collection instead of judgment, because we all know that a scientist who is good puts their judgment, so judgment of self, I should be able to do this, judgment of their body, oh, I'm breaking down, that must mean I'm falling apart, that's it for me, judgment of the world around you, like I'm an idiot for even trying to do what that person on Instagram does, whatever, like setting all of those feelings aside and actually starting to put on your explorer's cap and getting your little notebook out to collect data about everything you're experiencing. And that goes from like the immediate thought you had after you finished your sets of whatever push-ups. Was it guilt? Was it instantly like a negative vibe, like I should have done that better, or I could have done more but I didn't? Or was it lazy, or was it happy, or whatever? And it doesn't matter what you find, simply that you see it as an explorer or a scientist would, and then take that information and start using it to nurture your journey forward. So maybe tomorrow with the push-ups, maybe not tomorrow because you just did them today. So maybe in 2 days when you do your push-ups, the next time you're going to say, I'm going to notice my thoughts as I do this, or I'm going to notice what I think on rep number 10 and try to do it different than I did last time. And take kind of like positive mindset of just being wondrous again, which is what kids do. It's exactly what kids do. We all did it. Like the wonder of discovering your feet when you're a teeny tiny baby, and the amazement of discovering things that your body can and can't do when you're a toddler and you're a kid running around. If we can just help adults return to that more, I think that paves the way for immense joy as you're training and getting fitter and healing injuries and going on the journey of being the caretaker of your body.
And this is so refreshing to hear, given, you know, that I suppose the old adage of no pain, no gain has, a lot of people still have that. And yeah, there's a friend of mine in Australia, his name's Bruce Scott, and he says, doesn't have to hurt. And it's his slogan, and I love it. It's just true. It doesn't always have to hurt. We can go through this process of exploring our bodies and being in that explorative mind, outside of the judgment, and start to bring the joy back to physical training and just having a body in general. And yeah,
I couldn't agree more. And I think so many folks have been adversarial with their body for so long that that's the default. And so it really is a whole new language of learning to get on the same team and start listening to that inner voice that actually knows. You don't have to ask somebody else. That actually knows if you can get still enough and hear it. And that actually knows what, like you're right, the no pain, no gain thing. I still hear folks who are like, I felt something not good on rep number 6 of my squats, and I still did 3 more. And I'm like, what? Why would you do that? Like, oh my goodness. Okay, so we have to work on that, because that was a signal from your body. And it's okay that you didn't listen then, but that's interesting to know. Why didn't you listen to that signal from your body? What do you think that signal meant? Do you think you could listen to that next time? What would it take to listen to that next time? And not being so like, shut up, body, I don't care about your pain. But being like, oh, interesting. I'm supposed to do 10 squats today, but rep 6 did not feel good. You know what? I'm going to stop. And owning that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it ties in with
that.
Yeah, it ties in with what you were saying before about not just in the bigger context of like what my training's about right now, but also like when I choose that, like, can I go beyond that space of going, well, I don't have to get 10 reps today to be a success, and being in that, I suppose, intercommunication with your body all the time and developing the ability to listen, because the body's, it's really clever. Uh, we've got to give it some credit as well. And it's part of us. It has its own mind. We know that cells have the capacity for memory. And so I'd love to hear a little bit more about that. Like you were talking before about helping people, I suppose, and I really like the way you talk about it. When you talk about intuition, it doesn't feel soft to me. Like, you know how that can be really like, follow your bliss, you know, sort of thing. And
I do.
yeah, like when you talk about it, it kind of feels embodied to me. And so I really think that people listening could get maybe some really good insights from you, just talking a little bit about intuition and your training, and how they can start to maybe bring that into, maybe break up the stagnation a little bit, maybe break up that kind of, I need to go in and I need to do X amount for it to be a successful session and for me to feel good about what I did today. Of course, I'm just throwing a lot of things at you and just seeing what you pick up. Yeah, so intuition, training.
It's a big thing. It's a big thing. That's okay. Even big things can be worked through and handled. I will say this, as someone who was not intuitive with my body when I was younger, and who dragged it, kicking and screaming to do the things I wanted to do, the I who is separate from my body, apparently. But seriously, as someone in their 20s who could not fathom not doing their training exactly as it needed to be done by who? Standards, I guess, that I had set for myself. It's quite common to hear us talk about intuition and to feel nothing resonate in your body yet. That's quite common, because if you've gotten really good at shutting down your intuitive voice for whatever reason, because our bodies are always trying to help us. So if it was for you and your thought mind, your monkey mind, safer to shut that down at some point, then that's what you did. So it's okay if for a while after hearing this that you might go, I have no concept of what they're talking about. But if you can begin by just starting with like, apparently there's a thing that I'm supposed to be able to hear in my own body. So says Kate, okay, whatever. And if you can just hold space for like, apparently that's supposed to be a thing, maybe it'll show up for me someday. You at least start to open up the invitation to you and your body to start having a conversation again. And that shows up in an interesting way. I've noticed, and I'm not a therapist of any kind, but when it comes to mind stuff, you start noticing thoughts you didn't notice before. So like you're having all these thoughts and you start noticing things like, oh, I just was really angry with myself because I didn't get the last 4 reps of my squat because I had this pain thing and I stopped. But even noticing that you noticed that and that you paid attention to it this time around. So that it does take time, and that it's okay if you don't have any connection to what we're talking about right now. But for me, I actually spend a lot of time journaling, which helps because for me, the written word, I know some people can't, they hate written word stuff. So find a medium that works for you. But for me, it's I'm in the moment right now, thoughts out of my head, and then reading them with a different part of my mind helps me start striding out like the different parts of me. And so the part of me who instantly reacts to something, I should have been able to hold that handstand for longer. The part of me that is gracious, that is like, it's a teeny tiny voice at first. It was like, man, you couldn't do handstands with that straight of a line 4 years ago. And like, it's in there, but I only could catch it when I would like write all this stuff out. And then some tiny part of me reading it back would have that compassion for how far I've come. And so for me, that worked quite a bit. And then the whole next step of the journey was testing out my ability to trust myself. So like making a decision based off of what felt right intuitively, and then trying it with not something small at first, nothing like, what am I going to eat for lunch today? And seeing how I felt and how that resonated. And then you start building up like some momentum with that. Like, oh, when I am in my element of listening to my inner voice, it feels like this. When I'm not, and I'm doing the comparison game or the judgment game or drag my body along behind me game, it feels like that. Oh, okay. Now I have a framework. From there to here where I am now, and hopefully where I'll get a lot longer, though, that was probably 10 years. So when I tell folks, like, you're in this for the long haul, right? Because it's going to be the long haul. Like, I'm not one of those people who knows the hacks to, like, get you to get something faster. So if there is a hack for developing your inner voice, I'm all ears, or all body, as it were.
Beautiful, beautiful. Yeah, I like what you said too. Sometimes, I notice as a coach, and you might notice this too, that sometimes our greatest strength is to see what can be really obvious because we're just not the person. Like it's like when you lose your pen and you're like, "Where's my pen?" Someone just goes, "Your pen's right behind your ear." And I like what you said about with intuition. Sometimes we need to kind of step outside of ourselves a little bit and embrace different parts of ourselves and look back upon ourselves with that perspective, whether we do it via journaling or whether we kind of do it in an imaginative way, something like that. Anything to get us just looking at things from a different perspective, looking at ourselves with a more compassionate eye, with deeper, without sounding too cliche, deeper gratitude for what we have right now. All of that sort of stuff. So I love the way you described it, and I think it could be really helpful for people that maybe feeling a bit stuck in their physical regimen and is feeling rigid, and their bodies kind of they have a sense. I think people always have a sense that their body's telling them something, and maybe then that will give them the courage to make a different choice the next time they go back into the gym or outside to take care of themselves. And is there anything else that you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, I think it can feel quite scary to consider listening to your inner voice, because again, going back to like, the devil versus the devil you don't, right? Like you are not a devil, okay? You know yourself, but it can be scary. It can be scary initially to do it different. And that can be true of anything. It can be scary to switch from a powerlifting coach to a yoga practice. It can be scary to start a new job or change the way you do anything. And in that is a beautiful container of growth to know that you have the bravery and the power to go into that scary thing, and that you'll handle it, that you'll absolutely handle whatever comes up, even if that's loss of size because you're switching from hypertrophy to gymnastics or something like that. You'll be able to handle all of it. But I want to acknowledge that can feel really scary if you're sitting on one side of that decision ready to make the leap.
Yeah, beautiful. And change is the only constant, right?
Ain't that the truth?
To close up, I suppose like if you could go back to you're probably familiar with this type of question, like if you were to look back and go, "Hey Kate, 10 years ago," and just kind of throw some pearls, maybe that Kate wouldn't have listened, who knows, but I know former versions of myself might not have listened. But if there was like 3 things with the knowledge that you've garnered about the body and the mind that you could impart to yourself, or even to someone that's listening, to help them take a step, courageously, maybe into something different that they feel that they really need. Is there any particular things that, like, just 3 big things that could really help them get started? Even one big thing, it doesn't really matter how many. Yeah.
So I do know that line of questioning, and at this age now, in my mid-30s now, I wouldn't have listened, and I don't think I'd want to interfere. I will still have advice to share, yes, but I don't think I would have wanted to interfere, because I couldn't have gotten to exactly where I am right now without going through everything. And then, that includes especially the hardships. My greatest growth containers were the most horrendous things that I went through over the last 10 years, 20 years, whatever. So anything that would have perhaps had me not have that same situation happen, I don't know that I would have wanted to interfere with that, because the lessons and where I'm at right now are because of that, because I was perfectionist and bullheaded, I am where I am now, right? Because I was unwell when I was younger is where I am now, right? But that being said, That being said, knowing full well that younger Kate would not listen, and I'd be just kind of talking to myself, which I would be literally anyways. I think the biggest piece of advice, or whatever we want to call this, that I would give myself would be that there isn't one right way, and that you're always doing it the right way. Meaning, I firmly believe every human is always doing the best they can. So what you're experiencing right now is your best and is exactly right for what you need to experience. That's what I just said, right? Like, me being a bullheaded perfectionist, got to do it by the book way when I was 20, allowed me to be where I am right now, right? So that way was the right way for me then. And what I'm doing right now is the right way for me now. So none of the ways are the right way, because there is no one singular, like, singularity right way, but they're all the right way. So you don't have to belabor, like, I wish I would have known this sooner, I wasted all this time, because that's a common one people say. Or, you know, I should have been better than that, I should have known better, Kate's right, I have an inner voice, like, because people say that. No, like, you're exactly right wherever you are right now, and none of it is singularly the right thing, because it all is.
Beautiful, beautiful. And
thanks.
Yeah, that I really resonate with what you're saying, because that creates the space to keep going. You know, to be kind to ourselves and not beat the shit out of ourselves, and get back up no matter what happens, and go, well, you know, good or bad, it was what it was. It is what it is. And now I'm just going to keep on stepping, rather than being flawed by that injury, that, you know, that emotion, that thought, you know, just keep on stepping. That's kind of what that reminds me of. Hopefully I've captured what you've depicted. Yeah.
It's exactly right, because it's all right.
Well, it's been a real honor, Kate, and thank you for sharing your experiences, and just being refreshing in general. I hope that everyone listening to this, whether you're a man or a woman, it doesn't really matter, has kind of just got something that they can just take away. And I just would challenge them to just try. Take a step with, you know, if something has resonated with you, take a step and just see how it integrates into your life. And and if there's something that you feel like you get to a space and you're just like, I don't know how to address that, whether it's an injury or anything like that, then Kate is a good person to talk to. And so how can people find you after this? And if they've I imagine if they've come this far, they've probably resonated with what you have to say and what we've been talking about. But if people would like to know more about you and all the cool things that you're doing, how would they go about and do that?
Hands down, the best way to stay in touch is on the Facebook page for Fit for Real Life, just because it's the most ongoing conversation that we're having, and that's just Fit for Real Life at Facebook. But if you want to read a bunch more about anything I've shared here today, there are hundreds of articles on fitforreallife.com that you can just read at your pleasure, and explore more and kind of dive down the rabbit holes where you'd like to. And then also I'm on all the social media stuff, so people can drop in and share and engage. And I'm a big fan of the conversation aspect of it. So as clipped as it is when you're on the internet, I do appreciate, like, the mediums for what they are. As we were saying before we got started, I appreciate that I can kind of keep up on your life or comment on something that I think is cool that you're doing. So people are welcome to do that. And you did make a quick mention. If somebody is ready to start heading on a journey to be more unbreakable, my program is available for them. And I trust that any person listening or watching this will know exactly what's right for them. So if that is right for them, cool. And if not, that's okay too.
Awesome. Well, I'm looking forward to part 2. And
I am as well. I'm honored. Thank you for this.
It's a pleasure. Thank you. Well, over and out to everyone watching. We'll see you again soon at another Mind Body Medicine conversation.